Hi everyone, and welcome to Unit 5. In Unit 5, we'll be taking a look at diagnostic and procedural coding. Here in the US, we have three major coding structures. They include ICD-9-CM Volumes 1, 2, and 3, and CPT-4. ICD-9-CM Volumes 1 and 2 essentially relates to diagnostic. It's the diagnoses. The code set ICD-9-CM Volume 3 and CPT-4 pertain to the procedures and services that are provided. So in a clinical setting or an inpatient setting, one would use ICD-9-CM Volumes 1, 2, and 3 to code both the patient's diagnoses and the procedures and services that were performed. In an outpatient setting or an ambulatory setting, the code sets ICD-9-CM Volumes 1 and 2 and the CPT-4 would be used. So codes are assigned based on a patient's diagnoses or the reason for their encounter. The diagnoses, of course, is what brought the patient to seek medical attention. ICD is the International Classification of Diseases. It was developed by the World Health Organization in the late 19th century, around the time of the Black Plague. There's a lot of information in this week's unit pertaining to the history of ICD, so be sure to take a look at the PDFs that I had provided by the World Health Organization, which gives you a little bit more information about the timeline in the development of ICD. So why do we use a code? A code actually helps us to uphold HIPAA standards. The code is a common language which is developed to maintain the privacy and confidentiality of patients. This common language can actually be used across the spectrum of healthcare, across the continuum, and also for third-party payers and a multitude of other secondary users of the information that can aggregate the data and use it in a meaningful way for research, education, and for a variety of meaningful ways. Again, I provided a few PDFs from that pertain to the uses of clinical data, and I believe that the PDFs came from the CDC. As of October 1st, 2015, the United States will be changing to the ICD-10 CM, which is the 10th revision of ICD. The CM is the United States clinical modification of ICD. ICD-9-CM, which is currently used in industry, is very limited at this point of time in the future. ICD-9-CM was developed back in 1974, and if you can imagine all of the technical advances that have been made in the medical world, you can just imagine how limited this code set actually is at this time in the future. So ICD-10-CM and there's quite a few differences listed here on this slide where you can kind of take a look at what those common differences are. ICD-10-CM actually allows a coder to code to a much higher level of specificity. So the steps in diagnostic coding and both procedural coding, we'll take a look at those in a minute, but they are very similar. First thing that we would want to do is to locate the diagnoses that's documented by the healthcare provider. We would determine the main term of the diagnoses, and by main term, I'm referring to diabetes, hypertension, influenza. We would find that main term in the alphabetic index, and then we would read any applicable instructions. There may be notes for you to see another term. So we're going to kind of follow the rules or follow our guides as we move along. And then we're going to take that information from the index and we're going to look up the code that we've determined in the tabular list. We're now moving from the index into the main section of our volume. You never code from the index when you're assigning either a diagnostic or a procedural code. So once we get to the code that we're seeking in the tabular list, we're going to read any applicable conventions. We're going to take a look at the symbols, any footnotes and cross references, and we're going to kind of read through the entire category. By doing this, we're going to actually select the code that allows us to code to that highest level of specificity. CPT coding, which is the current procedural terminology coding, was developed by the AMA in 1966, and this describes medical, surgical, and diagnostic services. The basic steps in CPT coding is to identify the procedure, service, um, or supply that was provided, and we're going to determine the main term, rhinoplasty, cystoscopy. We're going to look up that main term of what was performed, and then we're going to look that up in the alphabetic index, and again, we're going to actually just jot it down. The thing with CPT coding is there may be a single code, there may be multiple codes, there may be a code range. So we're going to actually jot these down from the index, and then we're going to go to the main section or the numerical section of the CPT manual, and we're going to take a look at those codes that we've selected. We're going to read and follow again any special notes, instructions, or conventions that are noted. One thing that I've found about CPT coding is you want your eyes to move up and you want your eyes to move down, because sometimes there's notes in the beginning of a section and sometimes there's notes at the end of a section. So once you become familiar with CPT coding, you may not need to do this as much, but while you're learning, definitely keep the eyes moving up, keep the eyes moving down. Then we're going to determine and assign the appropriate code. There are some additional PowerPoint slides for this week's unit that actually further break down CPT coding. There's quite a few YouTube videos that also further provide more information than the chapter on these particular topics. What I plan to do is on Wednesday evening, beginning at 5 p.m., I will be in if you go to the collaboration tab in e-learning, if you go to the collaboration, there is an option for chat room. Unfortunately, that is really one of the only ways for us to collaborate online, which I was hoping that we would be able to do tonight, but I thought that it would be more beneficial if you could kind of take a look at this information and then we can actually hold a question and answer session on Wednesday, which I think would be a little bit more productive than what we could accomplish tonight in just a chat. So take a look at this week's information or this unit's information. Um, we will kind of delve into a little bit about the history of ICD in this week's activity. And we'll also have um, a question about selecting the appropriate codes in our discussion board. So I will be here Wednesday evening from 5 to 7:30. So if you want to log in and chat along, we can do that, and I can answer any questions that you have. And I'm also available via email, or I think in the last message that I sent out, I also sent my cell phone number. So if you have any questions or you can't meet Wednesday night, let me know. That way we can kind of get going on the information for this unit. And I am also going to extend the due date. I was thinking about this, and I'm going to extend the due date until Friday evening instead of the Wednesday when we meet for our next face to face. So I'll extend it for a couple of days because of um, the delay in, not necessarily the delay in getting the video up, but I was hoping to have a more productive collaborate this evening. So to make up for that, I will allow a couple more days for this unit's assignment completion. So I will talk to you soon and take a look at the information, and I'll be available Wednesday to answer any questions. All right. Thank you.